Hello, welcome. We are live at the launch pad here at the Guiana Space Centre for the 5th launch this year. Our passenger today, SES-15, is a geostationary communications satellite for SES and built by the guys and girls at Boeing. I'm in the Mission Control Centre here, Jupiter, 20 kilometres from that pad, roughly as the crow flies. And the launch is going through its final preparations for liftoff. That's scheduled in just under 14 minutes' time. You can see the countdown clock there on the top right-hand side of your screen. So we are flying on board Soyuz today. This is actually the second time that Soyuz will have carried a geostationary satellite from the equator. Soyuz stands 46 meters high and weighs 388 tons. And sitting on top of the launcher inside the fairing is our passenger SES-15 for the operator SES, with a launch mass of 2.3 tons. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that's very light for a geostationary satellite. Normally they weigh in at around about 5 tons, this is because SES-15 is an electric satellite, SES's first one. All this makes today's a slightly different mission.
The liftoff of the 17th Soyuz will occur from the Guiana Space Center.
The target orbit is a sub-GTO. After the standard Soyuz 3 stages ascent phase, 2 frigate boosts will be necessary to reach this orbit. One close to the perigee and one close to the apogee, with a long ballistic phase of 4 hours 33 minutes in between.
For this mission, the ground stations network includes Galileo, the French Guiana station, Natal in Brazil, Ascension, a British island in Atlantic Ocean, 2 African stations, Libreville in Gabon and Malindi in Kenya, and finally New Norcia in Australia. Those stations allow us to follow the whole flight. No loss of visibility is foreseen.
The separation will occur 5 hours 18 minutes after the liftoff. After that, a last frigate boost increases the inclination of the frigate end-of-flight orbit. The total mission will last 7 hours and 4 minutes.
Data collected by the stations are sent in real time to the CDLS, the Soyuz Control Center in French Guiana, and to Moscow in the Frigate Flight Center monitoring. Claude Legrand is our technical representative in Moscow for this flight. At the end of the mission, she will be in charge to deliver the orbital diagnosis to the management in Jupiter to confirm the correct separation conditions of SES-15 and their final orbital position.
Arianespace is going to launch the US Boeing-built satellite for SES, the European operator, with Soyuz, the mythical Russian launcher. Arianespace always offers the best solution for any of its customers.
So, a long journey ahead today, and on the right of your screen, those are the status panels which are displayed here in the Mission Control Centre. They are showing us the health of 3 main systems across the base: the rocket and the pad, the satellites and the range. You can see them there. That's what everybody is looking at here in the Mission Control Centre. Now, we are coming up to an important milestone.
Attention pour I0 moins 10 minutes, 20 secondes.
There's the Range Operations Manager Raymond Boyce about to announce it.
Top, début de la séquence finale, lanceur.
And he has announced the beginning of the final synchronized sequence for the frigate upper stage, the last 10 minutes. It's sent the signal to say that it's ready for flight, and the computers are now running the final checks. They have a lot of operations to deal with during this time. So we are 9 minutes and 45, 46, 47 seconds to launch and counting down. SES is getting closer to its liftoff time, getting closer to starting its journey to its geostationary orbit, which is, of course, 36,000 kilometers above the Earth. Let's find out more about today's mission and go over to the CEO of Arianespace.
Dear customers and partners, ladies and gentlemen, Arianespace is delighted to welcome you at the Guyana Space Center for this new Soyuz mission. For the second time this year, our medium-weight vehicle is about to perform a GTO launch from the CSG. It will put onto orbit the first full electric telecommunication satellite, SES-15, for our close customer, the European operator SES. The payload has been built by our long-standing partner, Boeing. Thanks to SES for your trust. Soyuz is now on the launch pad. The operations linked to the final countdown are in progress. The launch is imminent. Following liftoff, Soyuz will head towards the east to separate the satellite on an elliptical orbit inclined at 6 degrees with respect to the equatorial plane. Due to the electric propulsion of the spacecraft, the mission is a long one. After a first burn of frigate and a long subsequent ballistic phase, SES-15 will separate around 5 hours and 30 minutes after liftoff. But let's leave this launch together. Go Soyuz, go SES-15, and of course, enjoy the show.
So, Stéphane Israel there, ladies and gentlemen, the CEO of Arianespace. Now, we have a number of different operational teams working here in the Mission Control Center, often known as Jupiter, rather fondly by the locals here. This is the Flight Directorate, or the Flight Desk. These are Arianespace top management, and they take all the final decisions in the case of unplanned situations. And of course, we have joint Russian and European teams sitting shoulder to shoulder here. Now, the other control center is the Launch Control Center, and that's about 1 kilometer from the launch zone in a specially protected building. It's called the Soyuz Launch Center. We have various teams working in here. One is responsible for the ground operations. They are led by the launch site operations managers. And again, we have Russian and European teams working side by side. And another team is responsible for the flight readiness of the launch vehicle, of the Soyuz today, and that's led by the production managers. And of course we have very strict procedures, all of which have to be adhered to. Everyone concentrating hard at this point now as we get closer and closer to the launch. Some of the other teams here working in the Mission Control Center. This is the Program Director for Arianespace, the Program Director's desk, in charge of the contract for Arianespace, and the Satellite Mission Directors are in charge of preparing the satellites for SES, Arianespace's customer. And they have the job of confirming when the satellite's ready for launch, and they communicate with their control center, who are the people who will be actually flying the satellite. Of course, all of these men and women work very closely together during the launch campaign. Let's find out what everyone's been doing to prepare for today.
Talking about a launch campaign, you talk about two different campaigns, the satellite campaign and the launcher campaign. Each team works alone to begin with, and then they work together during the combined operation plan called the POC.
The launch campaign Soyuz VS17 began February 1st with operation on the upper stage frigate in the MiG building. In parallel, in the MiG, the three-stage was horizontally assembled. First, the two half sections on the central core. Then, around the central core, the four boosters were integrated, giving to the launcher its familiar shape. Finally, the third stage was linked to the main core. This part is easily noticeable due to the lattice beam. After 3 weeks preparation, frigate was transferred to the F-Cube, the frigate fueling facility.
For this VS17 preparation campaign, SES-15 is the first satellite to be launched from the CSG using an electrical propulsion. Preparation was shorter than usual, as no fueling operations were required. We only used electrical checks, which were successfully carried out. The combined operations began at day -9 with the strapping of the satellite on the flight adapter. SES-15 was then transferred to the F3B building at day -8. Frigate arrived at day -7 and SES-15 was integrated at day -6. The nose fairing covered frigate at SES-15.
D-3 is a day where I transfer the three-stage and the upper composite on the launch pad. Early morning, the three-stage is put on vertical position thanks to the carts. By the end of afternoon, after 1 hour and 30 minutes trip from S3B, the upper composite reached the pad. Then, hoisted in the mobile gantry at the level 27 meters, and finally assembled to the three-stage.
The 2 other days were used for dress rehearsals and final verifications before the final countdown.
And on day 0, the tanks are filled. After a synchronized sequence of T0 minus 20 seconds, the engines are ignited and the liftoff occurs.
So that's what's been happening so far, and here we are today now at 2 minutes and 51 seconds to the scheduled liftoff time. I'm in my commentary box now in the Mission Control Center, and it's a surprisingly beautiful day out there. It's been extremely wet and rainy, but it does not seem to be raining quite so much now. So the frigate upper stage started its countdown, synchronized countdown, and now we have also had the beginning of the final sequence for the main vehicle. Look at that big mast. It's called the KZM, carrying the umbilical lines to the upper composite, the upper part of the launcher containing the satellite. That's going to pull away just before launch. Those lines have been disconnected now. There's a smaller mast underneath it. You can just see it on the right-hand side. That will pull away just afterwards. A word about the ignition sequence. On Soyuz, there is a system for checking the health of the engines before it leaves the pad. We throttle the engines up over a period of 17 seconds, 16 in this case, just to make sure they're working well. And once they've been throttled up, the engine leaves the pad. Nothing can hold it back. Coming up to the 1 minute mark.
À tout de DDO, attention pour moins 1 minute. Top I0 moins 1 minute.
We are 1 minute to launch. We are live at the Guiana Space Center, and we're launching SES-15, the European operator's first all-electric satellite built by Boeing. And we're traveling on board the 17th Soyuz to launch from the Amazonian jungle. Our best wishes to all the teams.
L'organe du mât KZM. À tout de DDO, attention pour le début de la séquence d'allumage du lanceur. Top I0 moins 20 secondes. Largage du mât VKM. Allumage triétage. Attention pour le décompte final. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Top. Décollage. Liftoff. Sont normaux. stabilisation du lanceur. Paramètres propulsifs sont normaux.
And they
Vol nominal.
are off. SES-15 has begun its long journey. Raymond Boyce, the range operations manager, is telling us that
Paramètres
everything
nominaux.
is going according to plan. Les paramètres sont nominaux. Everything's normal. We're heading east. That's unusual for Soyuz. Normally it goes north. We're going east today because we're carrying a satellite headed to geostationary orbit.
Propulsion premier et deuxième étage, nominal.
I was rather hoping that we were going to see the boosters fall away there, but we just lost the launcher, and we are coming up now to the scheduled moment when we jettison the boosters. Look at those super images from cameras mounted on a previous launch. They are twisting and turning. It's all part of the plan.
Extinction des moteurs du premier étage, séparation des boosters, AVGD.
That's all been confirmed now. So we're burning the main core stage. It's going to burn for about 3 more minutes. And we're looking here on the top right-hand side of the screen. You can see our trajectory. That's the planned trajectory, and the cross is the actual position of the launch vehicle. Bottom left is our altitude, 81 kilometers above the Earth and climbing. We're heading towards the Kármán line. That's the border between space and our atmosphere. It's where the atmosphere
Vol
becomes
nominal, trajectoire nominale.
so thin that it can no longer support vehicles with wings. So it's where aeronautics ends and astronautics begins. Look at the top of the vehicle, the nose. That's called the fairing. The satellite is inside there.
Paramètres de structure du lanceur sont nominaux.
And it's been protecting the satellite from the rigors of the launch so far. So from the acoustic vibrations at liftoff, it's very loud, you can just imagine. And also from friction, because we have been traveling through the dense part of the atmosphere. But now the atmosphere is so thin that we don't need it anymore. It's able to be jettisoned.
Séparation coiffe.
And that separation of the fairings been confirmed. So we can see our satellite for the very first time. The captain has switched off the seatbelt signs. There it is on the right-hand side. The rectangles are the solar panels. Of course, right now it's all folded
Paramètres
up.
propulsifs nominaux.
And later, once it's been released, it's going to open its wings like a butterfly. And the gold structure, if you look on the right-hand side of the screen, is the frigate upper stage. And the satellite is attached using a very special and clever dispenser. Bottom of the screen, our distance from the pad, 432 kilometers. That's if you were to draw a straight line along the Earth from the pad. This is the scheduled separation now of the second stage and ignition of the third stage. Those
Allumage du
parts,
troisième étage, bloc I, extinction du deuxième étage, bloc A, séparation bloc A.
and he's confirmed that. Soyuz has what's called, or uses rather, a hot stage technique, which means that
Largage de la section arrière du troisième étage, bloc I.
it switches on the third stage engine before switching off the second stage. A word about our confirmations. We're seeing the key moments happening at the planned time. We get our actual confirmations
Paramètres de structure du lanceur sont nominaux.
of those milestones just fractionally later. That's perfectly normal. That's because it takes the information a little bit of time to get to the range operations manager here at the Guiana Space Center from the launcher, and that's because it goes via Moscow, where it's validated before coming to the
Tous les
launch
paramètres à
control
bord
center
sont nominaux.
here at the CSG being the Guiana Space Center.
Trajectoire nominale.
He's telling us that everything is going nominally. Our speed on the bottom right-hand side of your screen, 4.63 kilometers per second. And we left the pad from the northeastern corner of South America. Galileo there on the left-hand side is the tracking station here at the CSG. We lifted off 6 minutes and 46 seconds
Acquisition
ago
d'un
from the pad.
téléviseur par la station de Natal au Brésil.
And he's telling us that we have now picked up the signal at the Natal tracking station. You can see it there. It's on the northeastern coast of Brazil. We're tracking the launcher using the ground stations. Look at that superb replay. We were very lucky to have such a beautiful view of the launch because it has been raining a lot recently. It's been raining cats and dogs, to be honest.
Fonctionnement des moteurs du troisième étage nominal.
And today we got super blue skies. These images we're looking at are CGI images, computer generated. They're showing us exactly what the experts have calculated is happening to the launcher and the satellite. So basically what happens is the teams plan a very precise schedule of events based on extremely accurate predictions, and they put all of that information into the computer, and these images are a simulation of those predictions. So basically every movement, every position, every twist, every turn, every flash of an engine that you see is based exactly on what has been planned for this flight.
Vol nominal.
Everything's going normally. Our altitude 200 kilometers. We're traveling at coming up to nearly 7 kilometers a second. The third stage is now shutting down its engine and separating from the frigate upper stage. That's what it looks like as it is jettisoned, and we are now starting the next phase. The frigate upper stage is in what's called the pre-burn phase. It's getting ready to switch its engine on. That takes it 55 seconds.
Inspection du troisième étage bloc I, séparation de l'étage frégate et du satellite SES 15.
Now we have
Orbital.
confirmation of those events. So what frigate does is it gives a quick burst of acceleration, and that pushes the fluids back into the tanks. So it's a little bit like when you put your foot down on the accelerator in your car and you get pinned back against the seat. And the frigate upper stage is switching its engine on now. So we're really beginning the next part of the journey. The main propulsion phase is over, and frigate
Fin de visibilité, Galio.
is our taxi driver. Its job is to deliver our satellite to its drop-off point in space. We call that the separation orbit. So frigate, the gold structure on the right-hand side and the satellite to the left of it with the rectangular panels there. Frigate has 6 spherical tanks organised in a circle. You can just see it on the right of the screen. Four of those tanks are for propellant and 2 for avionics, which you normally find in the cockpit of a plane. Frigate was originally designed as an interplanetary probe to travel around in the solar system, and then it was adapted to fly on Soyuz. It can actually switch its engine on and off up to 20 times, and that means that it can take its passengers pretty well anywhere they need to go. So that makes Soyuz ideal for launching all kinds of spacecraft, and particularly useful for constellations. Today, it's going to use its engine twice to push SES-15 to its drop-off point in space, to its separation orbit. Our altitude, 186 kilometers. Our distance from the pad, well, we've traveled nearly 3,000 kilometers in a straight line across the ground. And we're traveling at over 7 meters a second now. The teams at Boeing built SES-15 at their factory in El Segundo in California, using their 702 SP series of platforms, SP meaning small payload. And this is the 53rd Boeing satellite that Arianespace has launched, but it's the first time they've carried a satellite in the 702 SP series. Arianespace actually has 4 other Boeing satellites in the order book. So, SES-15 is SES's first all-electric satellite. And it's also their first hybrid payload, so it's packed full of innovative technologies.
De visibilité de la télémesure par la station de Natal.
SES-15 is our hybrid satellite, and by hybrid I mean that the payload actually has 2 distinct parts. It has a wide beam element for broadcast and broadband distribution type of services, and it has an HDS element, which is really for our data service and for our aero mobility type of services as well.
The main sectors that will benefit from SES-15 are the aeronautical sector, the maritime sector. We are also going to provide services to highly intensive data applications such as governmental networks and enterprise networks.
Because it's a completely electrical satellite, the orbit raising is relatively slow. SES-15 is only around about 2.3 tons, but from volume and capability, it's an 8 kilowatt satellite, and the amount of payload that we can carry, because we don't have to carry so much fuel, is extreme. So it's a very, very cost-effective satellite for us. It offers huge capability into the marketplace, and this is actually the very first all-electric satellite that SES has ever launched. So it's electric propulsion for the orbit raising, and it's electrical propulsion for the subsequent station keeping. So all electric.
3, 2, 1, fire!
We are actually tailoring and specifically designing those beams to have more capacity where more demand is needed. For instance, on the regions from Washington to New York, that's where you have the most intensive aeronautical traffic. We also have a hosted payload called the WAAS, the Wide Area Augmentation System. And this is going to be used by the FAA to improve the accuracy and the reliability of GPS-based navigation.
It's the first time that we've used Soyuz for a geostationary satellite for SES. Of course, the O3B satellites were both launched on the Soyuz launch vehicle, but for the GEO world, this is the first time we've even launched it. This is only the second GEO mission that Soyuz has run. It's a superb vehicle. It's very exciting, and we can't wait to get ahead with this launch and to move on with the mission.
So an exciting day for everybody here, an important satellite, and we are now flowering out across the Atlantic. We've got halfway across. We're using the tracking station in Ascension Island to follow us. That's a volcanic outcrop in the middle of the Atlantic. Used to be a stopover during the early days of commercial airlines. So the trend for electric satellites is growing, there's no question about that. Already 15% of satellites in Arianespace's
Tous les
orbital
systèmes
are
bord
electric.
fonctionnent nominalement, le moteur frégate fonctionne nominalement.
Everything's going normally. And it's predicted that by the 2020s, half the world's satellites will be powered by electric motors. Now, this type of propulsion means that you don't have to carry propellant, because the engine gets its power from the solar panels. So there's lots of pluses to that. It means that you can save on mass. And that's why this satellite is lighter than normal. And you can make satellites that are just as powerful, but half the weight. In space, where every gram counts, that's a big saving. And it gives you the opportunity to embark more services on board as well. So that's why Soyuz is able to carry SES-15 on this mission. A normal geostationary satellite would be too heavy for Soyuz, probably about 5 tons. Soyuz can accommodate a geostationary satellite up to just over 3 tons, and SES-15, of course, is only 2.3. So it's light enough for Soyuz to be able to launch it. You can see Ascension Island, the tracking station in the middle of the Atlantic. We're heading towards the west coast of Africa. The next one to pick us up will be Libreville. That's the acquisition there. This is the second time rather, that Soyuz has launched a geostationary satellite from the equator. Now we have confirmation of the Libreville tracking station, acquisition of signal. The first one was Hispasat 36W1. That was the end of January. That was a 3.2-ton satellite. Now, all these kinds of campaigns create strong bonds between people and long-term friendships. Teams have to work closely together, solving problems and having some fun at the same time. Let's find out about the fruitful relationship with SES.
The time required for this transfer from GTO to its circular orbit at 36,000 kilometers altitude is somewhat longer than for satellites using chemical propulsion. Thanks to the performance of the Soyuz vehicle, we have been able to optimize the delivery orbit, hence reducing by 1 month the time to reach a GEO. So we are here today with Thiago Consor, the SES-15 spacecraft Deputy Mission Director. So Thiago, can you tell us a few words about the spacecraft mission?
Yeah, so SES-15 is going to be operated from 129 west orbital position. It's going to cover North America, Central America, and the Caribbean. And what is special about SES-15 is it has 2 missions, right? 2 specific missions. It's a hybrid payload. It's the first hybrid payload to join SES family. And it's composed of 1 wide beam coverage that's going to provide, for instance, broadcasting of TV channels. And it also has a 1 HTS mission that will provide high-speed internet for mobility applications. In addition, we also have a hosted payload. We have the WAAS, which is going to be operated by the FAA to improve reliability and safety of air traffic control.
And can you tell us a few words about what's going to happen after the separation?
After separation, we are going to turn on all the telemetry transmitters by an automatic sequence. And this will basically allow us to make first contact with the spacecraft. We're going to start receiving telemetry from all subsystems and make sure they are in good health. After that, we're going to release and deploy the reflectors, release and deploy the solar array wings, and we are going to initialize the electric propulsion subsystem for transfer orbit. SES-15 then will start its ascent to geosynchronous altitude.
Thanks very much, Thiago.
"20 minutes into the flight, coming up to 21 minutes. As we heard from Martin Halliwell earlier, the electric motors give a much weaker thrust than engines powered with propellant. So they do take longer to get to their destination, and for a geostationary satellite, that's 36,000 kilometers high, of course, 22,000 miles. So to help with this, the frigate upper stage is going much deeper into space than usual today. Normally, we release fuel-powered geostationary satellites around 2,000 kilometers above the Earth on average. So they have to travel the remaining 34,000 kilometers on their own. Usually that takes them some days. But today we are taking our satellite virtually all the way there and dropping it off at an altitude of 31,300 kilometers. So that means that it's only going to have to travel 5,000 kilometers on its own. Even so, it's still going to take it, I believe, around about 7 months to do that. So Arianespace came up with a solution for shortening that journey along with the SES and the teams and Boeing. SES-15 will be on an elliptical transfer orbit. An elliptical orbit is an orbit which is shaped like an egg. And the frigate upper stage is going to release SES-15 at the top of that elliptical orbit, where the spacecraft is closest to its final destination. So imagine at the top of the egg. So because of all this, we have a longer journey today. We will be having a coasting phase coming up, which will last about 4 hours and 30 minutes. And it's going to take us a total of 5 hours and 18 minutes from liftoff to deliver our satellite to its separation orbit. And he's confirming there that we have now picked up the signal at the Malindi tracking station, Malindi being on the east coast of Africa. If you look at the top right-hand side, you can see we're really climbing into space now. Our altitude on the bottom left, 519 kilometers above our planet. The frigate upper stage is getting ready to switch off its engine. It reduces its thrust slowly. Engines prefer to run down remaining fuel at a reduced power because it's steadier. Travelling at over 9 kilometers per second. We are now entering the first ballistic phase. Ballistic, of course, means without propulsion. There you can see the path that we have flown across the Earth. And there's the Malindi tracking station there on the east coast of Africa.
Extinction du moteur frégate.
And we have confirmation there that the frigate upper stage has switched off its engine. So yes, ballistic means without propulsion, so we are travelling high enough and fast enough to cruise without the engine. This ballistic phase is going to last 4 hours, roughly 4.5 hours. And that was our super launch nearly 25 minutes ago from the pad here at the Guiana Space Center. We're going to take a break during this coast phase and come back to you 8 minutes before separation of the satellite. I'm going to read out some times for you. So, local time here in Kourou, we will be coming back at just before 2:05 this afternoon, a few seconds before 2:05. That is 5 o'clock in the afternoon, late afternoon, Universal Time, 6 o'clock Luxembourg time, 7 o'clock in the evening Moscow time, and 12 o'clock midday Los Angeles. We shall see you again shortly. Bye for now.